The doorbell didn't just ring. It hammered, a loud, official, completely unwarranted thump against the calm of a serene Tuesday morning, making the silence shatter like fragile glass. When I pulled the heavy oak door open, there stood the entire board, led by Jacqueline Sterling, all matching tailored blazers, rigidly fixed smiles, and tightly managed expressions, flanked this time not just by her usual 2 clipboard lieutenants, but 3 thick-set guys in black polo shirts labeled Community Enforcement Division. They looked like mall cops trying to channel a Navy SEAL team, and they had a very bad energy about them. Overweight men trying to look official in tactical pants and cheap, embroidered patches, radiating borrowed authority that smelled faintly of cheap cologne and desperation. I didn't get the chance to ask what imaginary rule I'd broken this time, or if my mailbox was leaning 2 degrees to the left. The leader of the polo shirt crew actually started to read from a laminated card. "Mr. Vance, we are here in an official capacity regarding repeated code violations." Before he could utter another syllable, a voice boomed from the hallway behind me, deeper and calmer than any sound in that moment, and unmistakably lethal. "You'll be addressing me now," it stated, cutting through the tense air like a scalpel. The whole line of them, Sterling, the board, the rented muscle, froze, mid-smirk. Stepping forward, moving with zero wasted motion and filling the space like a brick wall in perfectly ironed slacks, was Sergeant Major Rhodes, Sarge, Liam's full-time recovery assistant, and, well, my son's full-time human deterrent. The effect was immediate. The enforcement leader's eyes flicked down to his shoes, realizing in a gut-punch moment that he was out of his depth. Jackie's jaw tightened. They recognized true, trained authority, even if they didn't know how to wield it themselves. I bought this place in Oak Haven Estates looking for a retirement. After 3 decades in high-level corporate security consulting, flying into conflict zones, dealing with black-budget logistics, and auditing contracts in countries where the rule of law was optional, I was absolutely done with fighting. I didn't just want quiet. I desperately needed silence for my son, Liam. He came to live with me after a non-conventional operational incident, a phrase that covered a traumatic brain injury, chronic pain, a spine held together with titanium, and the kind of deep-seated PTSD that made simple things like a dog barking or traffic noise a genuine physical threat, setting off internal alarms he couldn't control. The cost of his recovery was astronomical, demanding specialized care and unwavering stability. We found a strict rhythm, a schedule adhered to with military precision. Physical therapy in the mornings, chess on the porch in the afternoons, and the predictable structure that was the only thing keeping his reality anchored and preventing the dangerous spirals. I fought tooth and nail to maintain that simple, sacred life, which is why we hired Sarge. On paper, he was a medical assistant, but everyone knew he was a protector first. Built like a cinder block, polite to a fault, he moved with the economical, predatory grace you only see in guys who've spent decades walking through doors sideways. Ex-Tier 1 Special Operations, probably Delta or some secretive group with fewer vowels. He was effective, silent, and rigid in routine. He not only managed Liam's complex medication schedule and fixed my leaky faucet, but he also ran perimeter checks after dark, moving through the hedges like a ghost with a Glock, identifying every shadow and sound. Sarge's quiet, disciplined presence was everything Oak Haven Estates, or rather, its self-appointed queen, Jacqueline Sterling, didn't like. It signaled strength, control, and nonconformity, traits she felt belonged solely to her and her inner circle. The horror started slowly, a drip feed of bureaucratic annoyance that soon became coordinated harassment. We got a welcome packet, then the passive-aggressive letters began. First, petty nonsense. My door color was aggressive, demanding I switch from forest green to a compliant azure sage. A low-metal barrier I installed for Liam's delicate medicinal herbs, which helped manage his pain, was declared an unapproved obstruction in the sight line of imaginary traffic. The violations then escalated fast, becoming deeply personal and malicious. Urgent. Remove all unapproved reinforced shielding immediately. My Category 5 rated storm shutters, which I installed after the last hurricane ripped the roof off the neighbor's pergola and nearly took out our windows, were deemed too fortress-like and violated neighborhood visual standards. I went for a civil conversation with Jackie, inviting her to my home to review the FEMA documentation and engineering specs. She arrived with 2 board members, dressed like she was attending a shareholder meeting, an oversized blazer and too many pearls, doing a quick, contemptuous lap of my property. I reminded her that her aesthetics and sense of visual harmony don't stop broken glass from flying into your child's head during a major weather event, especially one who cannot process unexpected shocks. She maintained her tight, plastic-wrapped smile, her pearl earrings gleaming under the afternoon sun. "Aesthetics matter, Mr. Vance," she repeated, like a mantra, dismissing my son's health. "Rules are rules. If you don't like them, you are free to relocate." The smug condescension was not just an insult. It was a formal declaration of war. The fine arrived, $350. A week later, another $500 for failure to commence remediation. I appealed both, outlining the safety and structural reasons for the shutters, but they ignored every communication, citing my documents as non-conforming attachments. Instead, they filed the violation that was the line in the sand, the one that directly threatened Liam's core stability, unauthorized long-term resident. They were targeting Sarge, citing a bogus clause against unrelated guests beyond 30 days. I explained he was a legally employed, essential caregiver, protected under the Federal Fair Housing Amendments Act, a powerful medical exemption that supersedes local HOA rules. Jackie's chirpy assistant told me I'd need to present that in writing at the next board meeting in 6 weeks, fully knowing the fines would accumulate to thousands in the interim. The goal was clearly to fine us into submission or force Sarge out, regardless of the legality or the consequence to Liam's health. I hung up the phone, not in anger, but in the kind of chilling silence that precedes strategic action. This wasn't about aesthetics or rules anymore. This was about power, control, and seeing us, a wounded veteran, a protective father, and a silent guardian, as an easy target to bully into submission or push out entirely, likely to free up a prime lot for one of their friends. They had just crossed a line I couldn't allow, because threatening Sarge meant threatening Liam's only bulwark against chaos and potentially triggering a medical setback. I took detailed notes and decided to stop playing their petty game. I decided to fight by the book, a massive legal and financial warfare manual they didn't even know existed, built on federal and corporate auditing principles. The next day, I filed the formal disability accommodation request, citing every relevant federal statute, including specific case law protecting live-in caregivers. 2 days later, they fined us $50 for moving our recycling bins 12 minutes late. That was their petty, retaliatory response to my legal filing. I poured a bourbon and called a friend from my old job, a top-tier financial expert, who owed me a favor that required a decade of compound interest. I need access to every single HOA document on Oak Haven Estates from the past 8 years, I told him. Public filings, vendor contracts, board voting records, bank statements, raw data, all of it. I need to know precisely where the money is funneled and who benefits. He asked if I was getting back in the game, half joking. "Nope," I said, looking out at the manicured street. "Just trying to mow my lawn in peace." The strategic war began. First, the surveillance. I quickly noticed covert cameras, all carefully placed and angled only at my house, not the street. I confirmed the city hadn't installed them. This escalating scrutiny had a visible, detrimental effect on Liam. He stopped taking his afternoon chess sessions on the porch, preferring the dark safety of the garage, fearing he was being watched. The letters resumed with a vengeance. Improper host storage, suspicious activity, and, hilariously, referring to Liam's heavy-duty foam rollers used for physical therapy as visible military-like equipment. Jackie's cronies started appearing at 7 a.m., using matching pink tape measures to check grass height and photographing Liam's rehab apparatus, claiming it violated visual symmetry. It was pure, coordinated harassment, designed to chip away at our morale and make us feel constantly watched. I documented everything and set up our own hidden cameras to film them filming us. My deep digging through the HOA's public filings, thanks to my friend's raw data, unearthed something extraordinary buried in a contract expense column. Contracted compliance services, $18,750 per quarter paid to Sterling Property Compliance LLC, a private firm owned by Jackie's husband, Mark Sterling. This was an oversight, It was self-dealing and outright corruption. They weren't volunteers motivated by community spirit. They were contractors on Jackie's payroll, directly profiting from every fine issued. This established clear motive, proved financial misconduct, and provided a massive conflict of interest, the Achilles heel of any nonprofit board, confirming that the rules were just a revenue stream for the Sterling family. I let her think she was winning. I met with a civil rights attorney who confirmed my documentation was razor wire. We submitted an anonymous tip to city code enforcement about the cameras installed without permits. They were ripped down 2 days later by a very angry municipal crew who felt they had been used by the HOA. I released a damning audio clip to the neighborhood forum from a burner account named quiet_neighbor_art_78 of Jackie saying, "We need to squeeze them harder, make them uncomfortable. They'll crack eventually." The comments exploded, focusing on the word squeeze, revealing the predatory intent. I also requested a routine audit review of her husband's firm with the IRS, citing suspicious compensation and lack of proper contractor disclosure, under the alias Bartholomew Granger. I made sure to include details about the profit sharing through fines, suggesting a pattern of tax avoidance through their nonprofit status. But the final weapon, the one that changed everything, was discovered buried deep in Oak Haven County's Historical Land Registry. Archive File 89B, stamped October 14, 1978. It was the Special Use Exemption Covenant, Willow Creek Agricultural Corridor. I could barely breathe reading the language, which was simple, stark, and immutable. The document was devastatingly clear and had been missed by every subsequent developer and board. All lots in this specific zone, including mine, Parcel 17D, were permanently exempted from any future private governance, including HOAs. The language used the term unrestricted individual proprietorship in perpetuity. The HOA never had any power over me. Every fine, every warning, legally null and void. I locked the covenant away in my safe. I knew I needed to let Jackie fall from her own reckless height, proving the depth of her malfeasance and the illegality of her profits, before dropping the truth that would not only annihilate her regime completely, but dissolve the HOA entirely. The final, desperate overreach was the immediate administrative eviction notice. 3 of the Community Enforcement Division guys showed up at my door. The leader, looking anxious and uncomfortable, delivered the 72-hour vacate order, citing the noncompliance protocol and long-term residency rules. He was clearly shaking under the fake bravado. I refused the paperwork and called out, "Sarge, we've got a situation." Sarge stepped forward like a specter, his entire posture radiating cold, silent threat. "Identification," he demanded. When the leader stammered, Sarge cut in, his voice like gravel scraping against rock. "Your private contractors impersonating uniformed officials. That's a felony under Title 18, Section 912. You've delivered false legal documents to a federally exempt property, and you're standing on private land under false pretenses." He took one slow, deliberate step forward, crossing the threshold of intimidation. "You can walk away right now, return to your vehicle, and forget this address exists, or I will initiate a non-lethal detainment until the local sheriff and the FBI, who are currently monitoring this address for domestic terrorism threats against a disabled veteran, arrive. The choice is yours, and the clock is ticking." I backed him up, citing the non-existence of Sterling property compliance in the state registry and highlighting their lack of bonding. The 3 men, terrified by the mention of the FBI and the cold, unblinking intensity of Sarge, fled instantly, scrambling into their matching black SUV and speeding off like teenagers who had just stolen beer and realized they were caught on camera. I immediately sent the 1978 covenant copy to the county clerk, the regional zoning board, and the state housing compliance. I formally challenged the HOA authority over a historic exemption zone, ensuring it would be flagged and entered into the public record within the next 48 hours. My lawyer confirmed I had a slam-dunk case for punitive damages, citing multiple Fair Housing Act and surveillance violations. I told him I didn't want money. I wanted them gone, and I wanted the HOA dissolved or fundamentally restructured to prevent any repeat of this tyranny. Jackie's final bluff was a glossy newsletter threatening a full reassessment of residency privileges for everyone, not just me. That's when the unraveling became public. The sweaty enforcement agent leaked their training document, featuring phrases like target psychological soft spots. Chuck, the spineless board member, officially resigned, admitting he was told the covenant didn't matter and was pressured to enforce illegal rules. His resignation broke the board's quorum. Then, I dropped the bomb. I emailed the 1978 covenant, along with a plain language breakdown, to every single resident in Oakhaven Estates. This neighborhood is not subject to HOA governance. You have been lied to, and your money has funded fraud. The emergency board meeting was a room poised on the edge of rebellion. Jackie, trying desperately to spin the misinformation, was a relic. I stood up and placed my folders on the podium. For the past 8 months, I began, my voice steady and unforgiving. This board, under Jacqueline Sterling, has engaged in targeted harassment, fraudulent enforcement, and financial misconduct for personal gain. I held up the 1978 covenant, freshly stamped by the county. This community was permanently exempted from HOA governance as of October 14, 1978. Every fine, every notice, was issued without lawful authority. You had no power here, and you actively committed fraud against this community for profit. Then I presented the proof of racketeering from Sterling Property Compliance and the lawyer's formal notice of pending litigation against her personally. The dam broke. Neighbors, emboldened by the truth and by each other, called out confirmations and accusations. Jackie wavered, her plea for calm failing spectacularly. Her remaining board members resigned one by one, leaving her utterly isolated, abandoned by every single ally. I hereby resign as president of the Oakhaven Estates Homeowners Association. She finally choked out, the last word cracking under the crushing weight of public exposure and legal reality. Applause erupted, the victorious, cathartic kind of applause that signals the end of a war. In the stunned aftermath, we held an impromptu vote for temporary leadership. Liam, who hadn't said more than 3 sentences in public since his injury, spoke up, his voice clear across the room, cutting through the celebratory noise. You protected me when they wouldn't. You protected us all. Sarge, despite his initial refusal, was nominated and accepted the position of temporary leader, unanimously voted in. His first orders were precise, initiating the refund process for every fine collected under the illegal regime and immediately dissolving the Community Enforcement Division. Within a week, every fine was refunded, every lien canceled. Sterling Property Compliance LLC was under full investigation, and the HOA itself was officially being dissolved by county order due to the historic covenant. Meanwhile, my yard flourished. Liam started having chess sessions on the porch again. I installed a metal plaque, polished bronze, bolted deep into stone, right at the property line where the cameras used to be. It read, "Property permanently protected by legacy and law." The irony is perfect. Jackie wanted conformity and absolute power. She ensured absolute freedom and lost everything she held dear. Now, on warm evenings, I sit on my front porch with Liam, a genuine cup of peace in my hand. Sarge leans against the railing, still quietly scanning the horizon out of habit, but there are no more threats. No clipboards. No anxiety. Just the sound of crickets and the quiet peace you don't find. The kind you absolutely have to win and then actively defend. The kind of peace rooted in the bedrock of a forgotten law. So, here's the thing. I'm still wondering, was I right to wait until the very last possible second to drop that covenant? Should I have just shut them down on day one? Or did I need to let Jackie escalate? Did I need to let them commit the very acts of tyranny that ensured her complete, irreversible, and humiliating fall? And what's the line, really, between protecting your peace and fighting for justice in your own neighborhood? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I want to hear your HOA horror stories and who you think was ultimately right in this fight. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next time I have to call in an airstrike on a rogue sprinkler system.